I'm Cameron Bonzi. I am the VP of Marketing with Coast of Maine Organic Products, and I'm here with Heather Whitaker, who is the 2020 Maine Teacher of the Year. That's reason enough to have you on here to interview, but on top of that, we've recently given to your school garden. And as Coast of Maine, we've supported over 250 school gardens, and this year alone, 103. So we're happy to have you here. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about why you're a teacher first. Why?
Why I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
So I have always wanted to be a teacher. From the minute that people started saying, what do you want to do when you grow up? Who do you want to be when you grow up? I just always said I wanted to be a teacher. And I have this clear early memory when I was in third grade in Mrs. Lewandowski's elementary classroom at Bessie School in Scarborough, where Mrs. Lewandowski would teach on the board, and I would have the books on my lap. And I would pretend I was the teacher, and I would create assignments for different kids in the class. And so I just always gravitated towards school. I loved my school experience. I loved my teachers. And as I got older, I just realized how much I loved kids, and everything that I did, in terms of my career path moving forward was always with children and was always in the classroom. So it was just this intrinsic desire to teach and help kids learn and grow, not only academically, Cameron, but just also as a whole child, in terms of their developing friendships and relationships and cultivating who they want to be when they get older.
That is a really powerful thing. I mentioned to you earlier, my grandmother was a teacher, my mom was a teacher, my sister is a teacher. My daughter, even though she's a track and cross country coach now, wanted to be an English teacher coaching track and cross country. So teaching runs deep, and there's such huge value to teachers. So thank you for everything that you do. You've been a teacher, is it 18 years? Is that what I saw?
So this is my 20th year. Yeah, which is just really exciting. I can't believe I've been teaching for 20 years. So I graduated from Boston College, and I tell you that night after I graduated, driving back to Maine and the welcome to Maine sign, it was like this relief coming home. I knew I wanted to come back to Maine to be near my family, and Gorham is where I got my first job. So I have been teaching in Gorham as a Gorham Ram for 20 years, and just really feel deeply ingrained, not only in our school culture, but also the Gorham community culture, which is the reason why the different, food security projects that I work on have been successful, because I have the relationships with the business and the community members that give me so much support in what I do with my students and make really everything possible for me. Because it doesn't just take a village to raise a child, it also takes a village to deeply educate a student as well. So this is my 20th year. In the first 10 years, Cameron, I was a sixth grade teacher. And, one year I would teach math and social studies. The next year I'd teach science and ELA, always changing up the configuration. And then 10 years ago, our school district wanted to start an alternative education program to work directly with those students that we know could truly shine in school, but they were not showing that in the traditional classroom model. And so I was able to create a program from the ground up, design it with the vision on what, alternative education pedagogy is, and create a program that is based on experiential outdoor education and connect what we do outside with the standards and teach it in a really meaningful way to our students so that we could engage them in school, so that we could motivate them. And so their true academic selves and their true social emotional selves would really shine and come through. And it was I would have never known 20 years ago that this was my true calling in education. And this is my true calling. This is my passion. These students who were, can be at times underserved in the public education model, they are the kids that really tug at my heart and speak to my heart. So I have never been more, personally and professionally satisfied in the work that I do. I feel so fortunate to work with my students.
Is this where we both start crying?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. I'm getting a little bit of a lump.
So in that, so I've been at Costa Maine since 2007. I didn't have a gardening background really. I got a long history of stuff, but one of the things that over time, a lot of donations to different things, I started giving to school gardens and then decided to make it into an official program. I love, obviously, kids, teachers, local businesses, and growing organically. And so this is a way for us to put that whole program together. I think it's really important. I know it's really important that the local independent retailer is connected to the community. They do a lot of volunteering. For Costa Maine to come in and facilitate that, add to it, and bring the community together, that's a big thing for me. So tell me about how gardening helps you interact with those kids.
Right. So remind me of that question, because the first thing I want to say, here's just a big positive that comes from you connecting educators with local businesses.
Yeah.
So Blue Seal in Wyndham, was a business that I would occasionally stop by, and get items for, our own personal home products and also for the school garden. But a couple years ago, when I got my first donation from Coast of Maine and I went to Blue Seal to pick up the bags, I really learned, what wonderful people they are at Blue Seal. And since then, we have deepened our relationship, and I am purchasing as much as I possibly can because of that. So you connected me to a business that helps me whenever I have questions. I in turn am using the money that I raise for the garden at their business and supporting, just that local gardening company. So that was a byproduct of you connecting us together. So thank you so much for that. And even when I was, hatching some chicks, they were the people that I would call if I had questions. So it's not just about picking up the soil or picking up the straw.
Yeah.
It's also about the support that they're willing to give to just, community members, whether it's a school garden or you're a regular community member. So when I started the garden, it was back when I was a traditional classroom teacher. And I was really looking for a way to make the curriculum come alive. And like you, I had no experience in gardening. I grew up in Scarborough. I was on the soccer field, the softball field, or I was at the mall.
Yep.
And we had a new building in Gorham. The new middle school was being built. My classroom was on the south side. I was looking at this expansive, empty grass area and thought, I'm going to start a garden. Why not? So I love taking healthy risks. And I talked to my team partner who had a lot of garden experience. We're like, sure, why not? And I had just been partnered up with the nonprofit organization Cultivating Community in Portland. And they agreed to help me start the garden and worked with me during those first 5 years to create plans, to learn about organic practices that I had no clue about, like healthy soil and amending the soil and testing the soil and crop rotation and pest management, and really got me off the ground, pun intended. And at the same time, I was, thinking about my mission. What did I want to do with my produce? And I've always been passionate about helping to feed the community. And so with my first year students, we decided that any of the produce we grew during non-school time, right, during the time that I couldn't harvest and cook with my students, that we would donate to our local food pantry. And I started donating to the Gorham Food Pantry, which then cultivated this relationship with the food pantry. And I'm now a member of the board of directors. And that came from my project project and has been able to, help me develop my passion and live out my passion for feeding the community. And then I became the alternative ed teacher. And almost everything that you do in the classroom with the standards can be connected to a garden, the science and the social studies and math and ELA. You don't have to look too hard to create an experiential, education experience for your students out in the garden. And that's what I do. And, what we do in the garden really depends on the students that I have that year. The other thing that I love is that it's really this first work experience for a lot of my students. What makes a good employee? What makes a good worker?
Yes.
How do you show hard work?
Yep.
And how successful your garden is a direct correlation to how much you take care of it. And my students are able to see that. And because all of my students loop with me, from if I have a sixth grader, they come to seventh grade to eighth grade, they're able to actually follow the entire growing season. And I have students that come back and volunteer with me during the summer. And so they can see the progress. And for the students that can't, they come back in the fall and they see what they planted in the spring. And they are just as excited as I am to dig up those potatoes, to pull up the carrots, because the root vegetables I think are always the most fun because it's such a surprise when you're pulling things out of the ground. Because again, it's not something that I did when I was a child. So, I think this is my 15th growing season, and we donate roughly, we're at a point where we're growing about 800 to 1,000 pounds every year for the food pantry. And so it's just a deeply, deeply rewarding project that is at the center and heart of what we do in the alt-ed program.
You use a lot of terms and you speak the way that I like to speak. There's a real depth to obviously being a teacher and what you do, your enthusiasm. And what I've learned, because I was intimidated by talking to garden centers because I knew so little about plants. I still don't know a lot about plants. I know a lot about soil and the way that soil works and operates and connects to everything else. And it's what we're doing as human beings too. I also know that the people who garden are totally connected to the earth and they are hard workers. In that response that you were talking about of teaching a kid how to be a hard worker, how to see the results of their process, I think it's hugely important. And, talk a little bit to these school gardens, they're tough to operate in the summertime. And you obviously invest a lot of time. What do you get for volunteerism in folks coming in the summer?
All right, so I'll answer that second because you triggered one thought for me. So the one thing is for anyone who happens to watch, listen to our conversation, who doesn't know a lot gardening and wants to get involved, please jump in and try it. I am not, a master at all of this. I tell people who want to volunteer, come in. If a plant dies, a plant dies. If it thrives, it thrives. Take a risk. Don't worry about it. Don't be intimidated by it. Excuse me, because sometimes a barrier to finding volunteers is people are intimidated and they don't want to do something wrong. And you have to be willing to take a risk, to try something new, to try a new companion planting method that you haven't used before. Brussels sprouts. I've never had a lot of success with Brussels sprouts and I canned it for a couple of years. And this year I'm like, gosh darn it, I'm going to get back in with the Brussels sprouts. And I actually watched your little video that you had. Educational video. And I'm like, I'm going to turn it to the kids and have them research how we can grow a couple Brussels sprout plants successfully. So, I just really encourage people to have those conversations and to put it out there. I don't really know what I'm doing with this. Do you mind being a support person for me? So for volunteers, it is about those community connections. I use social media as a best friend and as an incredible communication tool. And I just tell people I'm really in need of support. Who would be willing to volunteer on a one-time basis?
Yeah.
Who would like to volunteer a couple times throughout the summer? Who
Yeah.
would like to be a consistent volunteer? And you need to be open to those different opportunities.
Yeah.
I also have been fortunate. For example, IDEX, they have a volunteer program that's part of their workplace efforts, and I have a group that comes out once a year, and they do a huge volunteer day with me.
Nice.
CV and Mahar Engineers, based out of Cumberland, they last year for 4 weeks or 3 weeks sent a different group once a week. They were tremendous because having that adult help is important. My students are amazing, but also having the adults to just get something done really quickly is really important for me. And then I also once a week have a session on Wednesdays, usually in the morning, like 9 to 10:30. And I tell people they can drop in and I'm here. So I harvest every Wednesday because the food pantry is open on Thursdays. And I want our food pantry clients to get produce that is fresh and was just harvested. So we'll harvest on Wednesdays, get some work done, and then I drive over to the food pantry and make our donation. So it's just, being creative and resourceful and asking people and telling people that you need some help. So for example, I have knee surgery next Friday. I'm going to be on
Now,
fully
wait a
on.
minute. Didn't your
Yes,
husband just
yes.
have knee
Mhm.
surgery?
Yeah, we have some bad knee
You
energy
are
happening
fearless.
at my house. So my husband had a knee replacement 2 weeks ago. I have knee surgery on next Friday, and I'm fully on crutches for 6 weeks. I have a full system set in place. Because also the Master Gardener program. I have a Master Gardener, Paula, who is, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do without her. And she has made this project her own. And she's really provided me with some creative tips to help the project be more sustainable. Because it really is me as the lead. And I'm looking at the project now through different eyes. In my 20th year of teaching, I'm looking at it as what can I do to just make this a little bit easier for myself? I'm in my space right now, and there's 24 garden beds. I have a 100 by 15 area over here with fruit trees and beautiful shrubs. I have an area across the street with, 2 rows of blueberries, 3 established strawberry beds, 8 established asparagus beds. It's a big project for one classroom. So now moving forward, my goal is true sustainability. I'm not going anywhere, but what if I did go somewhere? What would happen to this project? And that's, again, I'm not going anywhere, right? In case my superintendent's watching, right? Um, right. But it is important for schools to think about that when they have their garden project, if there's one key person that is running it. A funny side note, my husband and I had a foster child for about 6 years when we first met. And one time he was up at the garden with us, and we're working away, and he looks up and he says, "Remind me to never marry a teacher." he was he was cursing the project under his breath. Because sometimes there are days when I come out here with my students and it is hard work.
Oh, sure.
Maybe it's cool, or maybe it's a little bit drizzly,
Yep.
or maybe it's really hot, and that in and of itself is still an incredibly powerful experience for our kids to learn how to do the work even when the conditions may not be optimal.
Yeah, it's teaching grit. It's an
Yeah.
important piece. I know that I thought about that a lot with my own kids. So we've been on here, and I know you're busy, and you have been brilliant and kind and funny and inspiring. It's been amazing. I'd actually like to ask you if maybe I could check in with you maybe once a month, do the same type of thing, see how the garden's
Absolutely.
going.
Follow the progress of the garden. That would be really fun. And then I can also throw some questions out your way that you can field with your experts back at Coast of
Yeah, I
Maine.
always go back. I don't
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
I get it. Yeah. Right. A truly successful person knows when they can't answer a question and they know the people to go to.
That's what I do. So
Yeah,
well, thank you. And anybody watching this, please get involved in your school gardens, get involved in volunteering, and please don't hesitate to contact Costa Maine. Anything that connects kids and teachers and local retailers and organic practices is a great thing. Thank you.
excellent. And people can reach me. My email is Heather.Whitaker, Whitaker, at gorhamschools.org. So make sure you pluralize the word school. So Heather.Whitaker at gorhamschools.org. And I'd be happy to have some conversations about school gardening or alternative education.
That's awesome.
So
Thank you.
thank you. And thank you. Thank you, Coast of Maine.
You're very welcome.